Welcome back to the discussion series on the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers in search of creative teaching strategies. Today, we're talking about a model that influenced every discussion I ran in my classroom from my first year to my last, across grade levels, years, and countries. I've run hundreds of Harkness discussions, terrible ones, experimental ones, pretty okay ones, good ones, and absolutely incredible ones. Today, I want to tell you how Harkness discussion changed the way I see group dynamics and why I really can't talk about class discussion without centering this model. I want you to try Harkness or some spin off of it that fits your classroom space and size, and here's why. Maybe you've heard me talk before about the new teacher conference I attended in Northern California when I was 22. At some point during that very busy weekend, someone handed across a sheaf of papers labeled Harkness Discussions. Inside, I found some example discussion charts, a summary of the model, and a dream. Harkness was originally developed at Phillips Exeter Academy, where a philanthropist named Edward Harkness made a gift to the school that was channeled into creating and implementing a model of discussions centering student voices. It sounds pretty simple. Students sit down in a circle, ideally, but in practice rarely, in a circle around a large oval wooden table, and talk to each other. They face each other, they look at each other, they acknowledge each other's ideas, rather than all facing toward the teacher leading the way in class. By the time I started flipping through my packet in 2004, more than 7 decades after that initial gift from Edward Harkness, teachers had been experimenting with and improving this student-centered discussion model for a long time. I looked around online, I read everything I could, and then I decided to roll out a 1-month experiment in every class. I was way into experiments at that point, and my students were pretty used to seeing my metaphorical jazz hands as I rolled out poetry slam, performance project, transcendental showcases, and whatever else I cooked up late at night and on the weekend while I was working all the time. So they were game enough when I explained what we'd be doing. I showed them a picture of a circle discussion chart. I explained that a student observer would chart each discussion and give one compliment and one recommendation for improvement at the end of each discussion. By the way, not mentioning specific names, that's important. I explained that my role would be to help them prepare in advance for the discussion, but not to moderate it during the actual conversation. I warned them about the vast potential for awkward silence. I promised them that we'd get through it, and I also promised not to ruin everything by jumping into the first awkward silence, or the second, or the third, and rescuing them. We talked about what would make a student-led discussion go well, and then we started. During that first month of Harkness, I watched 4 different classes go through 4 very different evolutions. A block skipped the floundering stage and went right into the "we're awesome and we can rock this" stage. They had a lot of kids who did the reading and wanted to talk. So after the initial observer comments that not everyone was talking, which is pretty much always the observer comment in every class in the first few Harkness discussions, things with A block progressed pretty quickly. With a little bit of help from me and chatting with observers before class, observations became more nuanced, and the class moved into the common next stages of Harkness, like helping students work on not interrupting each other or finding ways to subtly invite and support student comments from kids who were more reluctant to speak, bringing more specific textual evidence into the conversation, making better questions, making better transitions. Then there was D block. D block, which was a wonderful class, floundered with the best of them. Maybe the trickiest transition into good Harkness that I ever saw over at least 25 different classes. Still, not to ruin the ending, but D block did get there in the end. In D block, I learned a lot about how to work with a slow starting class. I integrated strategies like careful warm-ups to give students plenty to talk about when I let them loose on their own. Staring down at my notebook and writing, "This is awkward, this is awkward, this is awkward," over and over again with careful focus during awkward pauses so kids would know I wasn't going to rescue them and I was very busy with my notes. And helping guide my observer in positively reinforcing even the smallest improvements and giving a specific, achievable, focused goal for the next discussion. That first month, with all my blocks, built the foundation to continue for the rest of the year. Though we stopped using Harkness every single day, it remained our discussion method, which we would go to once or twice a week. And that's how I continued into the next years. But that sense that I had from that first month of the method as a living experiment, an evolution that never ended, stayed with me. The next year, I surveyed my students about their experience with Harkness toward the end of the year, and here are some of their comments. "I think I've always been able to share my thoughts, but I've definitely changed as a listener. I've learned how to pay attention. I have changed. I seem to like to talk a lot more than I thought I would have. Harkness has allowed me to gain confidence in myself and what I believe is right. Harkness teaches hesitant speakers to be more confident with their ideas. Conversely, it shows talkative people the value of listening to their peers' opinions. I have yet to feel like sleeping during a discussion. I've learned to think before I speak. Over the years, watching my students, I watched powerful transformations. I learned how to help silent students break in, learned how to help dominators step back. And by the way, I think both of those things are equally important. I learned how to team up with my observers to chart dynamics relating to ever more complex factors in the room, like gender, friend groups, types of question, and topic transitions. I watched a brave young woman, our student body president, break down in tears after class as she realized for the first time that quieter peers she didn't think had anything to say actually had really rich contributions to make when space was made for them. I watched emerging bilingual students realize that others did care about their opinion and were willing to make space to hear it. Awkward silence became funny to me instead of scary. Wide-ranging student-led discussion became the norm. And that's where we're going to leave it for today. Next week, we're digging into specifics. Don't worry. Expect to see one episode in your feed on Tuesday about setting up success and the role of the observer, and another on Thursday on helping discussion dominators and silent students figure things out. I'll be coming at it through the perspective of Harkness because that's the discussion country where I've got my citizenship. But you can apply similar ideas to Socratic seminar or whatever spin-off of student-led discussion you prefer. See you next week. Thanks so much for joining me today to talk about the impact of Harkness discussions. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay creative.